Welcome to another Postgame Media edition of Talking Hoosier Baseball. Today is Thursday, May 25th, 2023. Luke Sinnard put on a gutsy performance with a quality start of no earned runs in 6 innings today. Brock Tibbitts led the hitters with a 2 RBI double. Sinnard left the game with the lead, but the Hoosiers struggled in all aspects in the final 3 innings and ended up dropping the game against Iowa 9-4, being sent into the losers bracket of the Big Ten tournament. Sinnard, Tibbitts, and head coach Jeff Mercer took questions from the media, including IUBase.com's Cassady Palmer, after the game.
Congrats on tying the program season record for strikeouts in your first year with the team. What has that been like coming to the Big Ten and able to have that kind of success?
It's I really appreciate being here. First of all, it just feels great. I worked hard throughout the summer and throughout the fall to perfect my craft, and it just feels good to see it pay off.
Are you at all frustrated? That's 2 straight starts where you've been really good, and then the bullpen hasn't been good on guys you can normally rely on. Are you at all frustrated by that happening the last 2 times you've started?
You could be frustrated about it, but our bullpen's been good the whole season. There's not much I can do about it, but our bullpen's been good.
Brock, you've had some phenomenal stops at first base, which you didn't play until you got here to IU. What's that transition been like to play at such a high level at a new position?
At this point, into my second year of playing it, at first it was a little bit tough, but I've gotten more and more comfortable the last 2 years. I had a lot of help from Coach Mercer, some of the older guys last year, and just helping me get more comfortable over there. By this point, it's kind of like my position now.
Brock, you drove in the 2 runs when the ball got over the guy's head. Were you at all surprised that wasn't caught when he came in too far? Or did you think you had a double off the bat?
Definitely a little bit surprised. I didn't know how well I got it, and then with the wind blowing in too, it's just hard telling what the ball is going to do. But I was able to just put a good swing on it, and it luckily got over his head.
Also, either of you, does it change the way you play this week? I don't care which one you answers this. Knowing you're probably a 2 seed in a regional, no matter what you do this weekend, should you approach it differently, knowing your fate for next week is pretty much sealed and that you're in the tournament?
We're taking it one day at a time. We'll get to next week when we get there, but right now we're trying to win a Big Ten championship, and it's on to Michigan tomorrow and trying to beat them and move on to the next round.
Well, Coach, you guys got off to a phenomenal start against Brecht, far better than the game earlier in the season.
Yeah.
But then seemed to really struggle with Christopherson, who you guys didn't see earlier in the season. What changed with those approaches, or was it something on his end?
He did a good job. He mixed heavy mix with the cutter and the slider and changeup and all those things. So he did a good job. I thought we got emotional and frustrated and kind of acted out in a way and respectfully. He did a good job, but we expanded the zone and chased some pitches that we typically don't, and so you tip a cap to him because he did a really good job of executing. But there was also some times from us that we didn't do a good enough job late once we lost the lead of just controlling the things that you can control, as cliche as it sounds, and just managing your at bat. And we kind of gave some opportunities away there, I thought, of just extending the at-bat. And you don't know. And stuff's good, but you got a pretty good strike zone for the most part. And you were going to have a chance to get back in the at-bat like we did early against Brecht. We really competed well and stayed in counts and competed with 2 strikes and extended the at-bat. And, you lead to a walk or a hit by pitch or some of those different things that we did earlier in the game. We just didn't do those well enough late. So, again, he did a really nice job, but we didn't do a good enough job of really just competing through those at-bats like we typically do.
With Brecht, I noticed last time he had everything locating well. Today, you were timing up his fastball, but it looked like he wasn't controlling his off-speed as well. Was that easier for you, or how did you handle that, knowing that he wasn't in the strike zone as much with his off-speed stuff too?
He was really good at our place, kind of like you said, was landing stuff and really commanding both pitches. And today he wasn't as good, but we also were better too. When you see a guy the second time, that really helps. And then we're 60 plus games in or whatever we are at. So you've seen enough now. Guys are a little more worldly and again, 97 to 100 is always difficult, but it's not as shocking as it was the first time you see that kind of velocity. So, we were better, and we were better today. He was better last time, but he did do a good job of settling in and giving him some length there in the middle innings when he's on short rest. He really very easily could have kind of wavered there and struggled, but he didn't. He settled in and did a good job. So you see that with good pitchers. If you're going to get to a guy, a good starter, you typically get to him early or once he gets to 100 pitches. But those middle, 3, 4, 5 innings, once they kind of find their groove, they're tough to get to. Kind of like same thing with Sinnard. If you're going to get to him, better get to him early because once he finds his groove, he's going to go. And the same thing for the Breck. He did a good job, and he did what a good starter does. You got to him a little bit early. He settled in and competed really well. We were better against him today than we were last time. I think probably experience helps, just having seen it before.
And then with the bullpen, you've gotten deeper, obviously. Boswell's been better. Hayden, until he gave up that home run, has been much better.
Yeah.
You've had some guys really step up late at the same time. Foley was off today. Last week it was Kraft. This week was Yoho, guys you can count on. So in a lot of ways, your pitching staff's gotten deeper the last couple of weeks, but it's also you're not as sure who you can rely on at the top. So is that all frustrating heading into, postseason here and then next week in the regionals? Now not as, even though you're deeper than ever now a pitcher, not knowing who you can go to as confidently in a high leverage situation.
Well, I mean, it's part of life. Not having Ryan, obviously today is hard, right? It's a really good change of pace from Sinnard. He's, the elevated sinker baller lefty is a really good change of pace from Luke. And so it's a little harder for Yoho and for Foley to follow up Sinnard because they're all three big physical righties. And so you can't change the look or clear the deck as easily as you typically can. So, but again, those guys have been so awesome for us. Yoho has been terrific all year, and Foley has been great the last month or 6 weeks, and obviously Ryan has been great the whole year, right? First team, essentially the reliever of the year in the conference. So it is what it is, and you just have to keep finding pockets for those guys, and then you have to credit Iowa for being really competitive and not giving up with 2 strikes and fighting. And then we also gave them 4 or 5 free bases there in those big innings where you're not going to be able to walk 3 or 4 guys and hit a guy, and there was a ground ball in the middle where we don't go back to second base after we initially go for the ball, we don't cover second base, and so that there's a base runner there, probably should have been an out. And against a really good team who's playing really well, they beat the Big Ten Pitcher of the Year 2 days ago handily. So against a team that's playing really well, you can't give them free bases, and especially when you can't change the look completely like we typically would, it's going to be hard. But no, it doesn't. It's not frustrating. It's part of the game. You play so many games, and I mean, shoot, we've won 41 games, so you live and you live to fight another day, and you move on. Those guys will be okay.
And then it looked like, to be fair, I mean, every team's hard, but I mean, Illinois in a lot of ways has go completely wrong for this park. They rely very much on the home run. That was an issue you had 2 years ago coming here. This park does not like to give home runs. It's a very pitcher-friendly park. This time you're built better for this park. You're a little bit more small ball. You and I were built perfectly. Illinois, obviously, you got through them, but it had to have been harder today knowing, that Illinois, trying to hit home runs almost exclusively for their offense, like a 250 average you did 2 years ago, made things a little easier yesterday going up against this type of park, I assume.
Sure. I mean, Iowa's good offensively, and I mean, they could play in the Grand Canyon, they'd be good, right? They're good in every ballpark. They put the ball in play. They hit the ball the other way with 2 strikes. They take breaking balls the other way. They're a veteran. They're really well coached. They don't swing and miss. They don't chase. They're tough, and they're a really good team for a reason. They're a preseason favorite and have been good all year for a reason, and they're going to be a really dangerous team in the NCAA tournament. So yeah, it's just hard. It's hard to win. It's hard to beat good teams, and you have to play really well, and you need a little bit of luck, and we didn't have it as much today. But yeah, you knew going into it, Sinnard was going to give you a chance because, I mean, shoot, that kid give you a chance against everybody. So, and then you got to make plays. You can't give away free bases, and you got to make plays against really good teams, and we just weren't good enough at that.
But was it harder? But what was it harder though? As I was saying with Illinois, knowing their style didn't really fit this park, trying to hit home runs. I'm assuming it was harder than Iowa.
What's harder is that we threw all of our guys last weekend, and then we're throwing. Ben Side did a good job, gets off to a good start, but then you're relying on 3 freshmen there afterwards. So, every game presents its own challenges. Illinois has a really good offense when it's conducive, like everyone does. But the hard part about that is you don't know what you're going to get from those young guys, and they were terrific, and so they did a really good job. We feel like we had a good matchup today on the mound. Obviously, more guys rested that are your typical guys. It would be nice to have Kraft, but it wasn't meant to be. So they didn't, they don't have one of their offensive guys, and we didn't have Kraft, and so that's the way it goes. But at the same time, every game brings its own challenges, and every game is difficult. It wouldn't be postseason baseball if every team wasn't good and didn't present difficulties. But that's life.
And Coach, in the 6th, when Sinnard was on the ropes a little bit and his pitch count was up, looked like you had come up the steps, and then Luke kind of shook you off, said no.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I didn't know if he was out of gas. We get 2 quick outs, and then he goes 3-0, 3-1, and then we kind of lay a fastball, and they get a base hit, and then we're behind the count. I think we have to count first and second at that point. And so when you're at this time of the year, you have to be really careful with guys and cautious. And I just want to make sure, are you still good? Are you physically you still feel good, or we just kind of lose our concentration there for a moment? And, he's competitive and pretty much told me to sit down. So he felt good and wanted to finish it. So, you're going to trust your guy. But, yeah, it was just kind of like when big guys like that hit a wall, they hit a wall. And so I didn't know if it was just like, hey, we got to refocus here while we're kind of starting to lose it, or we're out of gas. And pretty much he said, I'm fine and I'll finish it. And he did. But I didn't want him to get where we didn't have somebody hot, and now we're going to overextend him and we're going to overexert him. So that was kind of the only thing.
The Hoosiers are back in action at 3 p.m. Eastern Time Friday as they play an elimination game against Tracy Smith's Michigan Wolverines at Charles Schwab Field. Cassady Palmer will continue to have coverage from Omaha. See you at the BART.